Hey everybody, this is Julian Bucknell, the CTO at DevExpress, and I'm taking over from Amanda for today. Welcome to the 14.2 launch week and today's webinar, What's New for DevExpress Reporting and Dashboard, presented by the inestimable Analytics Program Manager, Seth Juarez. Join Seth now as he announces the official launch of the DevExpress ASP.NET Report Designer and describes all the newest capabilities shipping as part of DevExpress Reporting and Dashboard, including enhancements designed to improve dashboard readability and usage. Now we're going to do a live Q&A at the end of the presentation. You just type your questions into your GoToWebinar control panel at any time throughout the broadcast. We have some people online as well to help answer those, so you may have your question answered during Seth's presentation. Juarez.
Hello,
Seth,
everybody.
Yeah.
Yes, I am. And just a little FYI, I am actually broadcasting this from London. I am at NDC London. And so for those of you that always complain about things being late because you're on this side of the world, I feel your pain. Like, it feels like my workday should be over, but instead I'm doing a webinar.
In fact, this is a British webinar. So
Yes.
you're in London and I'm British. Okay.
Yeah, and so it works out. I find, like, everyone that I talk to here, for some reason I think they're smarter than me because of their accent. It's really unnerving. So, yes, I am actually in London, and so I am wired into the hotel room. So hopefully there's no problems. There shouldn't be. But today, I'm going to be speaking primarily about reporting and dashboards, some of the new stuff that we're doing. As always, I love taking questions. Julian will interject here and there when there is a sort of an appropriate break to ask questions. So please ask as many questions as you like. Today, we're going to be doing both reporting and dashboards, and then I think tomorrow I'm doing XAF. There's tons of webinars. To be quite honest with you, and so please stay tuned for all the cool announcements that we have to make. All right, so first up, I'm going to be talking about reporting. I'm going to talk about report server, some of the stuff we've done there, and then I'm going to go into reports core and some of the cool things that we've done. And my style is to just show you some projects and to just actually show you how the stuff works. So let me go and let's do some demos here. All right, there's my mouse. Sometimes my mouse gets lost. So let me go over here to the internets and notice that in the background I have the report server running inside of a VM. Right, I have everything in there just to make sure. I already have it pre-installed. I could have showed you how to install it. It only takes minutes, but I didn't want to waste time with stuff that you've already seen. The first thing I want to show you is when I go to the actual setup icon, and we got to wait till IIS wakes up again, you're going to see there's a brand new setting for how to actually view your reports. And I'll show you that as soon as, there you go. So IIS seems to have woken up. Notice that when I go to edit, there is this new report viewer setting. You remember that primarily we had this Silverlight restriction on report server to view reports. And if your end user did not have Silverlight, that like the report would just show up as a PDF. Now you can see that we have this HTML5 report viewing option. Now, we don't have an HTML5 report viewing control. We're sort of dogfooding this here in the report server just so you can get a feel for what it looks like. So let me go to reports. I already have a couple of reports that have been built, that I built. I'm going to go to the products report, and I'm going to go to display, and you're going to see this new, because I don't have Silverlight installed on this machine, you're going to see the new way of actually showing reports. This is our HTML5 report viewer, excuse me, and what you can see is that it's really fast, really fluid, and it feels really snappy, right? So let me go to multi-page and let me zoom out to something small. Take a look at this. I mean, it's pretty cool, and the best part about this is now when people are using the report server to view reports, they'll be able to view reports on any device irrespective of whether they have Silverlight or not, or a PDF viewer installed or not. And when it comes to export options, you can see we have a number of them sort of built in, so that when you do export stuff, you can see that here, you can set the appropriate settings the way you would like. And so that's really one of the cool things that we've added to Report Server. But it's not the only cool thing. Let me close this viewer. You recall that we have this Report Server currently in the 14.1 release. To edit a report, it would open a special link that would open up your end-user report designer on the client side. Well, one of the things that we've been trying to do as a company is to dog food all the stuff that we've been building, primarily in reporting, inside of the Report Server. So now when I go to design the report, you're going to see that we're using the fantastically built HTML5 report designer, all built in. The cool thing also is that now you can actually look at the actual data sources and change the data sources that are being used inside of the Report Server. So take a look. I mean, this is fantastic. Before, my feeling was that Silverlight was really cool in that you could interact with it really well. But HTML5 and JavaScript has come such a long way that we can sort of mimic or use those same interactions directly within the Report Server. And so now you can sort of change the bindings. You can change the way things are looking. It's pretty cool. You can also look at the actual reports items themselves. You can add and edit parameters. It's very, very cool. And so now the Report Server is not sort of reliant on the Silverlight editor or the client. The Silverlight viewer or the client editor. You can do everything directly within the end user report designer for the web. So a question Kirsten asked, what does dog fooding all this stuff mean? Dog fooding means you eat your own dog food. So if you produce something, you use it. And that means that when for example, our reports core team works on the designer, or our reports web team works on the designer, the report server team takes that designer and then provides a tightly looped there's a tight feedback loop that says, hey, we're trying to use this here and we're getting some weirdness. So it's like we're our own client when we're doing it. That's an awesome question. All right, so that's the report server. The other thing that's interesting that I wanted to sort of give you a little feel for is that we're really working hard because as you know, the report server is an end user tool, and I'll give you a brief summary of what it is here in a second. I probably did this backwards, but I think those that are familiar with our report server will understand what I'm saying. The cool thing is that it's sort of a hands-off approach to reporting. And so when you're looking at sort of setting up, because our reports, you can do pretty much anything with it, but we always kept getting the feedback, hey, I just want to put reports on a schedule and I want to have end users make reports. And so we built software that will do that for you on your behalf. But we found that many people are asking for, well, I want to interact with the report server via code. And so take a look at just how simple it is to do this now. So here is the new iReport server. Well, this isn't new, this is old, but we've added a bunch of methods. This is just to give you a flavor for how it works. We are using the task-based patterns inside of C# in order to make the code look a lot nicer, so you don't have to write a lot of callbacks. And so, for example, when we connect to the server, you notice you can connect to the server address, you can connect async and return the result, and that makes it so that you can use async and await when you're doing work with the report server. Now, when you want to export a particular report, once you have a connection, notice that you can export async using the client, and you can pass in the report identity as well as all of the parameters, and you can sort of export that kind of thing. And so you can look at this particular sample shows you primarily how to do it inside of a WinForms application. So now imagine a scenario where you have a report server managing the creation, scheduling, and editing of reports and viewing as well. But now you can create within your applications ways to access data, for example, reports, inside of the report server, inside of your very own applications. And the API surface that we've sort of made for this is a lot nicer to look at because we've been using the async patterns. So this is a pretty cool thing that we have made. Now, just a little quick review of the report server. The report server itself is a standalone product. You can buy it on its own, and the way we sell it is through CALs, and so anyone that wants to have a login to the report server needs to have a CAL, and this manages that. There's different groups inside of the report server, for example, report creators, viewers, administrators, system administrators, and then there's user accounts that belong to those groups. You can also create user groups yourself and add very specific permissions, and so you can do that. And then you also have report categories, reports themselves, these are the reports, and then the data models that are sort of built to sort of expose data to the reports. And then finally you have the all-important scheduling functionality that allows your end users to add tasks to schedule and send out reports whenever. And so those are the things that we're seeing. Those are things that you can do with the report server. The two features that we've added in a report server for this release is the end user report designer. You can literally go in here and you can say, hey, I want a new report. And you can do it all directly inside of the actual web browser. So we're going to run the wizard. We'll pick categories. You can hit next, and then you can go through and do what you're used to doing. And I'll let you play with that. If you're a universal subscriber, you have a license to use this with 5 CALs built in. All right, so I'm going to hit cancel here, and I'm going to close this down. And then I'm going to do something here real quick because I want to make sure that I have enough processing power. For some reason, GoToMeeting, it takes a lot of CPU right now, so I'm going to close down this VM, and we are going to be done with the report server. Okay, so let's go back to this. Now we're going to go to reporting core, and we're going to start to find out some of the cool things that we've done with reports core. Any questions, Julian, as we go? I need a drink of water here.
Yeah, there's a couple of people have asked, is the HTML report viewer only for the report server, or is it available for, say, ASP.NET MVC?
I will answer that in a second.
Brilliant.
Great question.
Okay, here's another one. Do you support the RDL format as an upgrade path? Asks.
You know, not yet. That's a great question. RDL, for those that don't know, is the SSRS version of reporting. The only there's no complaints with SSRS. The only complaint I have with SSRS is that it pretty much ties you to SQL Server. Our report server does not. It could care less about where your data comes from. As long as you have a connection and XPO connects to it, then you can totally use it. So RDL is the reporting format inside of SSRS. You know, I would love to make a conversion tool for it. I started working on a conversion tool years ago for Crystal reports to RX reports, and we do have some of that already. The problem is that you cannot guarantee a high fidelity one-to-one conversion, but our reporting tool, and you'll see this in a second, lends itself very well to sort of upgrading these things very fast if you can just sort of eyeball the thing, and I'll show you that in a second. Great question. Any other questions?
Hold on, I'm just answering a couple myself. That you're going to get to in a moment. Essentially, can we use the dashboards in a web forms application?
Yes, yes. And yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. I'll get into that more a little bit later on. Here's one. It says, I think Mike is saying, please explain the licensing requirements for report server. How do I offer this functionality as part of my application? I have 100 customers with 5. I get this question a lot. In essence, you want to be a reseller of report server. Remember, report server is not a developer tool. It is an end user tool. And so in order for you to have 100 people connect to report server, you need to have a CAL for each one of those people. And that's generally the way it works. However, if you want to use the report server as your software backend, there's ways, like I just showed you, to connect to it using the async API methods to generate the reports. The problem is you lose some of the granularity, because if you use just the, hey, I just want to use this one user and show reports in my application, you can do that, but you will lose granularity, meaning you won't know who logged in, you won't know who changed the report because it's the same user, etc. And that's kind of sort of an interesting problem. And so each user you want to use, if you're using report server and you're sort of feeding reports and scheduling reports as part of your application that feeds out to your users, you can do that, but you need to have CALs for anyone that has a password to get into report server. Great question. Anything else? Mike is asking about CAL pricing. Look, here's the thing that I love about our company. So I am going to, let me get a browser window open here to devexpress.com, devexpress.com, and let me bring it down because I'm working with two screens here. Look, if you want to go see how much stuff costs, go to Buy, Compare Features and Pricing. It's all here. I mean, we are not going to be tools about it at all. And so this is for our regular stuff. If you want to know, how much our report server costs, you just go to report server and then pricing. We put everything on there. If you buy the universal, you get everything we have plus the report server with 5 CALs. If you want to buy CALs, a pack of 5 CALs is $500, meaning $100 per CAL. If you have a high volume, then you can contact me or you can contact our enterprise services. Obviously, higher volume means bigger discount. I don't know what it is because I don't deal with that, but I will tell you that, look, you don't have to email me and I'll tell you a price. Literally, it's right there. This is what it is. If you buy the report server alone, it's what, $19.99. That gives you 15 CALs. I dare you to find a product of this type that's cheaper. Seriously, that's cheaper and that gets you the same value. We have a web designer now. We have a web viewer. We have everything self-contained, so if you have a tablet that's big enough, you can totally do everything in there. All right. Any other questions, Julian? I think I need to move on here real quick so that we can get going. So let's get into reporting. So I'm going to add a new project, and I'm going to make it a now we're talking about reporting core. I'm going to add a reporting class library, call it reports. And what I'm going to do is I am going to add some code here real quick because I don't want to type this all out. So in here I'm going to add some code, super fast. Rename this to students. And now you can see that in there, and it's just, you can see it's just I don't want to make a database call, and I wanted to fake up some data so that reports would work. Notice we have a POCO object, and I want to do reporting with this. Now here's the deal. Previously, to do this in reporting, you would have to use what is called a binding source object in order to get the design time experience that you would like. So the problem is that the binding source object, as you recall, is inside of the system.windows.forms namespace or assembly. And so what would happen is if you had a binding source in your middleware reporting assembly, and you use that middleware reporting assembly in a web project, it meant that you had to take a dependency on system.windows.forms, which is weird. I mean, I always felt like I needed to take a shower after I did that, and I only take a shower once a week, whether I need it or not, and so that's saying something, right? And I always felt dirty. But let's talk about how do we actually build software. So I'm going to add here, pretend this is my fake database, and this is my POCO object that represents the projection of the database onto my data. I'm going to add a new class, and usually we have this thing called the student service or some iStudent service, right? And usually in the student service class, we'd have methods like, hey, public IEnumerable of student, and then we'd have something like get all students, right? And then this would return student.get data, right? This, oops, not equal, student.get data, right? This would be one of our service methods. And then we'd have something like, you know, I don't know, method name, get all students older than, and then we'd have like an int age, right? So these are the kind of methods that we would actually write, right? Enumerable of student here, and then we would have to return like student dot get data dot where, and then we'd have a student, and then a student dot age is less than. Oh, we want older, so greater than or equal to age, right? So these are the kinds of methods that we would write, right? This is what we would usually. By the way, it's private. I want to make it public. This is what we're used to using for data, right? We don't usually connect directly to the database because that also made us feel dirty. We had all this sort of middleware stuff that we built to take advantage of sort of some advanced logic so that we could get stuff. Here, obviously, I'm faking stuff up, but notice that this happens to be logic. So let me show you what we would have to do. Well, let's show you what we've decided to build, and I want your take on it. So I'm going to call this the student report, and we're going to do the student age report, right? Just to give you a little feeling for where we're going. I'll hit add. I'm going to do an empty report first, just to finish up. Because usually you can do an empty report, or you can follow through the wizard if you want, which is also cool. The DevExpress gerbils are creating all of the code that we need right now, and so everything is getting loaded up right now. Let me close this to save on processor time. So generally what we would do is wait for Visual Studio. Generally what we would do is we would go to here, and we would change the data source, right? And if we need a new one, we did add new data source. And then we could say bind to objects, and it would automatically add the binding source dirtiness that we have had. So let's go to add data source. Now notice that the wizard looks a lot cleaner. You can bind to a database, entity framework, which is pretty popular, or you can bind to objects. Okay, so far it's a little bit better. Now let's go to object binding, and let me hit next. Well, first I need to make sure to recompile this so it will see all of the objects that I built. So, build fail. Let's see why. Error list. Oh, there's no errors. I wonder why it said build fail. Control-Shift-B. I'm not seeing why it failed. Well, I'll just assume it works. I don't know why it's saying it failed, but let's go ahead and go on, and let's go to the data source. Unless I made a mistake somewhere here in the code. No, it doesn't look like there's a mistake here. Oh, it doesn't look like there's a mistake here. I wonder why it says it's failing and there's no errors. That's really weird. I don't see any errors here. All right, well, I'll go on, and then hopefully this won't bite me later on. So let me go here to this. Let's go to data source, and let's go to add report data source, and let's go to object binding. And what it's going to do is it's going to ask me what do I want to bind it to. So we'll give it a second, and while it's loading data, oh, yeah, for some reason it's not letting me compile this particular thing. So let me close this solution and let me load it up again, and let's see. Hopefully it will let me see what's going on. So open it up. Control-Shift-B. Build failed. I don't see where my error is. Hold on. Let me go to. By the way, one of the things is that for some reason, GoToMeeting takes up a lot of CPU. So I apologize for that if everything seems a little bit slow. So let me make sure that there's nothing weird here going on that's telling me that there's some code break anywhere. No, student service, no, it's a public class. No, everything looks good here. Student age report, shouldn't be a problem here. But for some reason it's telling me the build failed. That's just weird to me. All right, let me delete this report, and let me go back to see if that'll fix it. Control-Shift-B. No, build failed. Student service, no, it looks good. Let me comment it out and see if that Maybe something there. Nope, not that. Let me comment out this class here and see if it does anything. Nope, don't see it there. So Control-Shift-B. So I apologize. I'm going to make a new project and just start again because I mean this seems a little weird to me. So we'll do a class library again. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop in some code that I've already pre-built. Hopefully it's still on my clipboard. Control V. Yep, there it is. And so let's rebuild here and see if this works. Oh, wow, there seems to be something wrong with this general code. I don't know what. I don't see where the error is.
It's definitely weird that you don't get any errors.
Yeah. Huh.
I mean, it's not like it's permissions problem or something like that, is it?
Yeah. Well, let me open one that I've done before. I named it something really good too. So this is one that I did for practice. So let me delete this here, and then Control-Shift-B, and let's see if that compiles. I know it worked earlier today, but the build, for some reason the build failed, and I don't see why it failed. Well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to trim this down, and then I'm going to try to eliminate all of the garbage code that may be causing issues. So let me cut that out. So this should be pretty good. The code all looks really nice. So when I Control-Shift-B this, yeah, I don't know why it's not doing. Maybe for some reason my thing is hosed. So let me do this. Yeah, I don't know why this isn't compiling.
Restart Visual Studio, perhaps.
We're going to have to go full bore on restart Visual Studio. So
we're going full Monty, people.
Yes, right. Sorry about that. Wow, I don't know what settings. The gremlins have got me, so I apologize for that. And then if that doesn't work, then I'll just show you sort of some good screenshots of how this works. So let me Control-Shift-B here. Oh, now the build works. That's weird. Hey, I'm going to chalk this up to Visual Studio weirdness because.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
Wow, that's upsetting. All right, so now when Visual Studio regains consciousness,
there we go.
I am going to uncomment all this code. Wow, but again, let me show you. For some reason, GoToMeeting takes it looks like it's Visual Studio this time, but I have like 100% CPU because of GoToMeeting. Look how much. So I apologize for the speed issues here. So all right, so I will go here, and now I will uncomment all of this goodness, and then we'll rebuild, and then we'll rebuild that other stuff in there. So uncommenting here. Give it a second. Control-Shift-B. Succeeded.
Yep.
Let's go here to this one. We'll uncomment this. Control-Shift-B. And now, did I Control-Shift-B already? Yep. The build succeeded, looks like down there. Yep, build succeeded. And so now I can do the report stuff that I wanted to show you. So let's go add, and then we'll do new item. And we'll go report wizard, and we'll call this student report by age. Okay. There you go. So I'm going to do empty report, and I'm going to start off again like I did earlier. And show you that generally what you would do is you would go to this little arrow thing here, and we'll wait for Visual Studio to catch up. All right, Julian. Okay, well, it looks like it caught up. So I'll go to the add report data source, and now I'm going to choose object binding and hit next. And while it's loading data, are there any questions, Julian, that I can answer?
Hold on a moment. We're still back on report server licensing.
Okay.
So if I develop, Kevin asks, if I develop an app that uses report server as the back end and I have one report server login running all reports of my app users, am I going to have issues running reports concurrently?
You might. And so here's the thing. I strongly suggest you don't do that because it seems like it would be weird. So what you can do is email me, and then we can see if we can work our way through to see if there's a good way to do that. Okay. Any other questions?
Hold on a minute. I'll leave Marcus's for a moment because it's huge.
Okay.
So, Kevin, we've answered that one. Where are we? Hardik asks, I have 500 clients in my organization to view the report, so do I need to buy 500 CALs?
You know, this is my opinion, and I don't know if it's official, so I'm glad Julian's here. For pure report viewing, right, you have what's called a guest account that's built in. And what you can do is you can set permissions to that guest account. It takes one CAL, and you can make that guest account inside of your applications using the API. You can render reports directly from the report server using the guest account for viewing. Now, if people need to get in there and do data models and edit reports and blah, 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 I would get them a CAL. That is my opinion. Does that sound about right, Julian?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to move on, and then we'll get some questions as we go again. So the assembly that I want to start borrowing data from is the reports assembly that I'm working with, and I'm going to hit Next. Now, here's the interesting bits. Remember, previously you would have to bind to this thing, but we always, remember, when we're doing like real programs, we have this good middleware that handles the sort of the logic. So I'm going to go to student service. By the way, this eliminates the need for the binding source. This off the bat, but we went a little bit further. Look at this. Notice I can bind to the entire object, meaning that that object is the source of the data, and I'm going to expect an IEnumerable of that object to do rendering. Or I can select a member to bind to. And this is the cool bits, right? Because we know that since we're returning an IEnumerable of students, that the report is a student report. Pretty amazing. But let's go even more complex, and let's bind to get all students older than method. Okay? We're going to bind to that method. So I'm going to go to get all students older than and hit Next. Notice that you can, it knows you need to put something in there. You can put a value in there, or you can make an expression. For example, it's a constant, or you want to work with other parameters. I'm going to cancel. Or you can make it a report parameter. So I'm just going to make a new report parameter, and the default value is going to be 20, and the description is age of person, question mark, and then hit OK. Then I'll hit Next. Next. And this is also important because we respect your service layer. We don't want to necessarily just call because we'll activator.create instance it and then load it up. And and we'll actually execute the code so that we can get stuff for preview. So imagine at design time you can bind to a fake service method that returns the same data shape, and then at design time you can use at runtime you can use dependency injection, for example, to swap that out. And so that's actually kind of cool. Or you can retrieve the data auto-magically. I'll hit Finish. All right. So now that we've done this, notice there's no binding source anywhere. Instead, we have this object data source. And that's really cool, right? Notice we also have the parameter that we've worked on, that we've used. And so that parameter is in there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a page header, and I am going to get I'm going to get the name, how many friends they have, their grade, and their age, and I'll drop it onto here using a regular click, and then I'm going to right-click drag over here, and you can see that I have made a report like in a couple of swoops. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can't change the font. Sego UI Light. You can see that that's all been changed, and then I'll go over here and bold it a little bit so you can see what we've got. And now the magic. I'm going to go to preview here. Oh my goodness. Notice it's asking me for the parameter, and it's running it. Look at the ages of all these people. Older than 20. That's amazing. Now we're binding directly to your middle layer. Your service methods, we're calling them directly, and we can use them. Now, if you don't want us to call them directly, you can create some kind of interface and then inject into it something. Or you can create a dummy service method that later you swap out. And so imagine being able to do that. Now you can give your report designers, you can give them fake data that comes from a method in a class, and they can generate the fake data, and then at runtime, just swap out the method. It's pretty amazing. And the cool thing about this is, I don't know about you, but I always felt kind of dirty directly connecting to the database. And so now when you're building applications, you can connect to the logic and the stuff that you built primarily for getting the data. It's seriously, I don't know of any other tool that does this, any other reporting tool that does it. And if you do, tell me, and I want to see how they do it. Because, I mean, I can't think of a better way to do this. Our developers did a fantastic job of doing this. So this brings me to another point. All right, let's just say that you wanted to see, let's see, name, friends, grade, age. Name, friends, name, friends. Let's just say you wanted to show the GPA of somebody, as well as if they were nice. Let me move these over. You know, I probably could have done it faster by just, we want to do, what is it? What GPA, control click, nice and tall, and I will drop them in here. And then I will make this go a little bit over like this. You know how sometimes when you're building a report, you're like, hey, you know, there's a section of the detail that I want to show, but conditional. I really want to know conditionally, you know, if I want to set this up. And someone's asking about dashboards. I am going to get to dashboards. Don't worry. But you want to show this all conditionally. And there's like a whole sort of, it feels like there's this whole band that you want to do, but that it's not a detailed band per se. It's not a detailed band, but it's sort of a sub-band part of this. Well, now we've added the ability to add sub-bands. So I'm going to drop this sub-band in there. I'm going to move this table over here, right there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to conditionally display this sub-band. So I'm going to set it to false. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to conditionally show this sub-band based upon a field. So I'm going to add a new rule, and this rule is going to be called over 40 rule. And what I want to do is I'm going to set this condition to a field, and I want the age to be greater than or equal to 40. That's when it's okay. And I'm going to set the property visible to true. Closed. This rule is now going to be applied to that subband. So now, when I control save, I'm going to go to preview, hit 40. Looks like something didn't go right here. Let me go back and see what I did wrong. So let me go to the subband here, and let me go to the rules collection. Notice I forgot to say this rule applies, so I'll hit OK. And now when I go to preview, hit submit, notice that for those that are over 40, this subband appears. So now you can create scenarios where with parameters you can conditionally show more of the data in your report and not show other data inside of it. And so this is what the power of subbands can do. You can add an infinite amount of subbands to any band except for the header bands. Right, so, except for these bands, right? I forget what they're called. Like I don't know if they're the header and footer, but they're like the margin bands or something. I don't remember what they're called, to be honest. Well, actually, it says right here, margin, except for the margin bands. But you can add sub bands to anything except for sub bands and the margin. So you can add as many as you want anywhere. And so now you can conditionally show parts of your data using formatting rules and sub bands. It's a very, 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 very powerful feature. Okay. So another thing that I want to talk about is this notion of cascading parameters. If you have a lookup setting on your parameters, so I'll do a dynamic lookup, you can actually create filter strings, right, that filter out the data that's showing up inside of your parameters so that you can have, say you have one parameter that shows X, and then you want the next parameter box, once they set X, you want the other parameters to be filtered based upon X. You can totally do that as well. So that is the cascading parameters feature. And then finally, there is this really cool feature that we've added that's supposed to help with editing tables. Editing tables has generally been sort of a really cruddy thing. So now, for example, you can add, let me get my mouse back down here. You can insert columns to the left or to the right, and notice that instead of like making weird half things, it just inserts it the right way. It inserts it the exact same size as the one that you're inserting, and it copies all of the properties. Now another thing. Usually when you move stuff around, it would do that kind of thing, and that's okay. But now if you control move around, notice, I'm sorry, I meant shift move around. Notice it will move stuff around, but based on size. So notice this is moving over. But now notice when I move from the right side of this, it shortens this over here. And so that's a shift move around. And if you want to see more of what these things are, you can go to this and it'll show you a number of things what you can do, sort of a shift move and a control move, and what does that really do. All right, so a control move does it shifts things, but it maintains specific aspect ratios. Okay. All right, so very good. I think I'm done with reports. And so what I'm going to do is, since I've only got 15 minutes left, and I ran into this whole hullabaloo about my stuff not compiling, I'm going to move on to dashboards, and then we'll take a look at some of the reporting questions. So if I'm going to be done at 7, but I'm sorry, it's 7 p.m. my time, 11 a.m. your time. I'm going to be done at 7 p.m. London time, but I will happily take questions as long as you want. Okay. Or as long as Julian lets me. So let's go to dashboards. We have filter elements, element grouping, coloring, and color binding. So I'm going to make a new project real quick, and I'm going to show you some of the cool stuff that we can do with dashboards now that we didn't have before. I'm going to do a ribbon-based application, create the project, and I never like this. I don't like this view, so I'm going to go to default look and feel. And I'm going to change this over to the office style, and then I'm going to go to the form, and I'm going to make sure that the window state is always maximized. Then I'm going to go to the designer, so dashboard designer, and I'm going to drop this on here. And while this goes, any questions, Julian, that I can answer, because this takes a little bit sometimes, especially when my CPU is pegged.
Okay. James Harvey asks, is there an easy way to line up the columns with the headers after resizing? Oh, I see what you mean. So you have a table, you have the headers, which is a separate band, and is there a way to line them up?
Yes, and so we have these snap things. So you probably saw that it turned pink, the line turned pink, and so that will tell you, it's sort of a guide snap, that will tell you that it's lined up to that thing. And so yes, you can definitely do that. Great question. Brilliant. All right, so I'm going to move on, and I'm going to update ribbon and take another question.
Oh, okay. I'm here primarily dashboards, blah, blah, blah. Is there a WinForms viewer control for your report format? I even know that, yes.
Absolutely. We have a report viewer for all formats that are available on .NET Stack, including, we're in the skunkworks, you saw already we're working on HTML5 report viewer. Good question.
Quick one, Eugene asks, is there a way to lock it to the header? I'm not quite sure what it refers to, though.
It probably means lock the cell to the header so that if you move the header cell, it will lock. Currently, there is not. But that's a really good question. I might push that one in. as
Okay.
a support. I'm sorry, as a feature suggestion. All right, so
Yeah.
now we're in dashboards. I'm going to go to data source and add a new data source here, and this is going to be our handy dandy support database that I use all the time, and we're going to connect to SQL Express. And I'm going to go to database, and I'm going to pick the analysis database, and I'm going to pick the support table and hit finish. Usually I would go through this whole spiel about all this other stuff that you can do in report server, but I'm sorry, in the how you can edit queries and all that other stuff. But I'm not going to. Those of you that are here for dashboards, I want to just show you the new stuff. A little FYI on what this is. This is pretend this is a support queue, support database. This is the customer asking the question. This is the employee answering it. This is the issue type. This is the product name. This is the state, like California or Kentucky. This is when it was opened, the question ID, how long it took to resolve, how long we wished it would have taken, and then the lat long of where the question originated from. So you can imagine the types of dashboards that I am going to do now. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to add a pie chart and a bar chart. And in the pie chart, I'm going to drop the ID and do a count here of total tickets. And then I'm going to slice them by issue type. Now I'm going to go over to this chart over here, and I'm going to do a count here. I'm going to do how many tickets there are, and then I'm going to slice it by the year, and then I am going to again slice it by the issue type. Now, by default, you remember that we would just pick random colors to highlight stuff. And that drove me batty. I'm sure it drove you batty too. Those of you that use, were hoping to, hey, you know, if normal is red here, it should be red over here too. Notice that it does that now. We have a way of automatically assigning colors to values. Sorry, my chair snapped back. We have an automatic way of assigning colors to values so that they're valid across the entire dashboard. But now looking at this, I mean, does anything about this strike you as incorrect? Yes, right? Normal tickets shouldn't be red. They should be green. Critical tickets should be red. So is there a way to change that? Yes. Let's go to Edit Colors. And notice that we have support issue type sort of built in. Let's change critical to red, normal to green. Well, I don't know if that's green, but that's green enough for me. And urgent, we'll leave it to, wait, urgent seems like it would be a yellow-ish. Now I hit apply. Boom. All changed across the entire dashboard. Across anybody that's using these types of, anyone that's using issue types now is going to use these colors. Now the question might arise, well, what happens if there's a new value that comes in? Well, then we'll default to assigning a new color, but the ones that you default assign, those colors will be bound, and those will be reflected across the entire dashboard. And these color bindings, mind you, go towards also, they will also work in the web viewer for dashboard. So there's a question about, is there a dashboard, web viewer control for dashboard, Alex? Yes, there is. Another question, is that per data source or field name? It depends on how you're visualizing stuff, so it would be per field name, and only the field names that are being used. Quick question, also I'd like to know if there's something roadmap related. Dashboard map support Bing integrations, just graph core components. Good question, Luciano. I'll have to look into that. Email me, see how you would like it to work. The next question is, in my database categories has colors, can I bind the color to the chart? That's a really good question. I'll have to look at more of the internals on how it works and give you a sense for if that works. That's a really good question. I suspect that there is probably a way to do it, but I'll have to see if we'll have to dig into the API to do that. Great questions. All right, so we've also added here, just a reminder, I did the coloring and color binding. We can do that. We've also added these new sets of elements called filter elements. Let me add one right now. We're going to do the combo box, and I'm going to move this combo box up to here. Oops, I didn't let it snap long enough. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bind this dimension to, for example, product name. Now, for example, if I want to do these dashboard elements are for pure filtering. So now for when I do Windows 8, it's going to change it. When I do WPF, it should change it. So these are all the WPF issues. You can see how that is going along. So that's pretty cool. So I'm going to delete this one and show you another one. We're going to do a list box. I'm going to put this over. By the way, one of the things about this that was really hard, let me add another. I'm going to add cards here real quick. Remember how when you would move stuff around, we had this kind of weirdness, but you wanted it to snap? Now when you move it around with this snap thing, you see that? It will actually hold on to it. So how did I, there you go. So now that I click on that, now notice that these will snap also when you see it. That's a kind of a cool, that's a really cool thing. There's a quick question here by Dietmar. What EF versions are supported by Report Core? Incidentally, it says EF there, but it's doing object binding. If it's an object, you can bind to it in a report. So that's the cool part. So if you want to know what EF versions are supported, they all are if they eventually go to a POCO object. All right, so I'm going to go to cards here because I want to see this actually happening. So product, resolve time, target resolve time, and I'm going to change this to less is good because if we're taking longer, then that's bad. And then, so there we go. And then I'm gonna drop an argument here, and I'm gonna do it by, I don't know. Let's do day, month, year. No, that's too much. Let me go by quarter year so you can see things going. Okay, now I'm gonna go to combo box, and I am gonna drop product name on there. So now no products, and then I can start adding products. So notice that this type of interaction allows you to do sort of multi-filtering, but with a control that is designed specifically for multi-filtering. All right, now I'm gonna delete this one, and I'm gonna add the last one that we have, which is the tree view filter element, and I'm gonna move this over here so that they snap, and then I want to bring this, below here, and I'm gonna move this one over here to the right. There you go. Oh, I went too far to the right, so I want to go. There you go, to the right. And then I'm going to make sure these snap together like so. And now I'm going to put the tree view in there. Remember we were doing the product name? You know, I'm going to do something even better. I'm going to go issue type, and then I'm going to go product name. So now this is what the tree view thing will do. So let me take these off. And now, by the way, these start to look kind of interesting. But again, I'm doing it only so you can see that it's actually doing the right filtering. So now we have this tree view filter as well. Now, here is the even more interesting thing. I am going to add this new thing called a group. I'm going to move this group over to the right, and I'm going to drop this into the group and this into the group. Take a look at what happens now. I'm going to uncheck this, go critical, normal. What? Notice that the group acts like a sub dashboard where you can add logically things that sort of interact with each other inside of the actual group. So now we have these really neat groups where the filter elements work inside, and sort of this sub sort of mini dashboard that you can use to interact with it. Okay, so I think that covers everything that I wanted to cover. For dashboards, we've also streamlined the API, so it's a little bit easier to use. I'll blog more about that later, but if you want to interact with the dashboard using our API, it should be a lot easier to use. All right, so let me make sure I got everything. I talked about the dashboard color binding. I talked about the grouping. I talked about the new filter elements. And there's again, it's pretty cool how we have this sort of all set up for you to do. Data sources there. Okay, so it looks like they're telling me that the HTML viewer is not available standalone. I do know this. HTML viewer is not a standalone, but we are working on having it be a standalone thing. So last thing I wanted to talk about before I finish, because I kind of skipped it, and I have about a minute. I forgot to talk about one of the coolest things that we have now that we are working on. So we'll go to ASP.NET Demos, and I am going to go to reporting here. Where's the reporting? It always seems to. You know what? I made a mistake. I want to go to the reporting demos because we have our own reporting demos. So I'll bring this down so you can see this right here. And I want to load up the, let's do a ASP.NET AJAX reports, although this will work in MVC as well. We are finally releasing and coming out of beta the end user report designer for the web. And that's something that I don't want to sort of forget to talk about because it's really cool. Let me go to the report designer here and load this puppy up. Let me go to the report designer here. By the way, this is just a component you drag on. It's the ASPX grid designer. Notice we have a really cool light theme as well. If you don't like the black theme, this is the light theme. You have the notion of bands are in there. Notice that you can add any kind of band that you would have previously, like detail or group footer or report footer band, etc., including the new sub band. So you can add those. The data source is in there. You can give it the data source and bind to stuff. Notice that you have a wizard as well. Right, and that wizard is bound to the actual data that you have, that you bound it to already, so you can change stuff up. You have the save and close, and then remember, we have an HTML5 viewer, but this viewer is tightly coupled currently to the end user report designer. And to use it, I mean, I know I'm out of time. It's a question of literally dragging it onto the design surface on your ASP.NET page, giving it a data source, giving it a report. It could be a new extra report, and that's it. When the save happens, there's an event you trap, and that event is saved, and you get the bits or the byte array of the actual report layout, and you can do whatever you want with it. You can really do anything. You can save it to a database. You can create a regex file and save the you can save the regex file. You can do whatever you want. It is seriously fantastic. I don't know what more I can say about it other than now you can truly hand off the whole process of editing and creating reports to your end users. And I might add, remember the couple of controls that didn't exist before? You can do charts, gauges, sparklines, and pivot grids, and you could not do that before. It is pretty amazing. All right, so that rounds out. Julian's fancy grandfather clock is telling me that it is time to take questions. All right, Julian, hit it.
We have a gazillion of them.
Let's do it.
Okay. Any plans to introduce IntelliSense to scripts? It's really important from the XAF perspective.
Yeah, tomorrow I'm going to be doing XAF, and so I'm not going to spill the beans too much. But we do have this end-user report designer embedded into XAF. Sorry, I spilled the beans.
Oh, come now.
So this designer
nobody's going to watch tomorrow.
I know,
now.
right?
Yes, you blew it.
Reports v2 includes the ability to have the embedded web designer into it, so it's pretty cool. So for scripting, we don't handle scripting in the end-user designer. My sense is that you can probably do it using styles, but again, we don't have every single thing. There's not complete feature parity between the WinForms end-user designer and the web end-user designer, but we are working hard to get it. Great question.
Is the report designer available in MVC?
Yes.
Okay, that was an easy one.
Yep.
Is it possible to save a data source in the dashboard? I don't even know what that means.
The answer is yes. You can save the data source, but if you save a data source that's directly bound to the database, sometimes you have to trap the onDataSource demanded event to give it the right credentials, because when you design the dashboard, you might be designing it on your client and then uploading the XML file into your website, but then the credentials you use to design it will not work when you run it, so there's an onDataSource demanded event that you can trap. Also, you can bind to an IEnumerable of T, and that will also work. Yes.
Do you have a data source wizard that can be set up in front of Snap, reports, and dashboards?
Oh, yes, I nearly forgot. Let me go escape here and let me load up this. There is in the toolbox this new thing called a SQL data source. When I drop it on, notice that it will allow you to sort of bind, and I didn't talk about this really, SQL Express. So the thing that you're used to using for the dashboard will allow you to sort of make this entire run a query. For example, we'll do support here, and I'll choose all this, and I'll hit OK, finish. Now this thing has access to that data.
Cool.
Right. So that's a SQL data source. So the question was, is there a wizard that I can use? Yes, you can use this particular wizard. You can also use this wizard, SQL data source wizard. There's some code that you have to write, but you can instantiate and run that wizard as well. So yes, you can do that, but it's only available in WinForms currently.
Next one. When I create an empty web form application and look for Dashboard Designer, I can't find it.
There is no Dashboard Designer for the web currently.
Okay.
That is right. There is no Dashboard Designer for the web. We are working on making our Windows or Client Designer perfect, but you know what? Our Client Designer is completely customizable. So you can go here, like here's the designer, right? Let me get to the form and make it bigger so I can show you some stuff. You can delete this button and add your own save button and save the dashboard layouts to your own database that your web later connects to, and so it's pretty powerful to do that. So there's a follow-up question by Vadim. What about end-user web dashboard designer? Will it ever be implemented? Yes. In my ideal world, we will implement that, and a lot of the stuff and the knowledge we're getting from developing the web end-user report designer will definitely carry over and make it a lot faster to do a web dashboard designer. It's something I definitely would love to have, and it's something that we're definitely going to talk about. All right. Any other questions, Julian?
Oh, yeah. We have never-ending questions.
I love it.
Yeah. Is it possible to choose the columns you report on via parameters?
No, and here's the thing. I would discourage doing that, because if you want to do a report like that, you definitely can. You can create sort of this interface that says, hey, pick the columns you want to choose. But then what you would have to do is you would have to build the reporting code. And you can do that, and if you want to do that, drop me a line and I can send you a sample on how to do that. But it's not something because our reporting tool is so versatile. What you would have to do is you would have to build a UI to pick from your columns, because like our reporting core doesn't care where the data comes from. As long as it gets a square of data, it will do data, it will report on it, or even a hierarchical set of data. By the way, to my knowledge, ours is the only reporting suite that works with hierarchical data without having to flatten it first, right? And so that saves a lot on memory, which is pretty cool. So yes, there is a way to do it. You have to write a little code. I'm happy to help you with that. If you would like to send me an email, drop me a line. I can.
If the getData method has a connection to the database and grabs real records from the database, will this still work in the preview in the designer?
Yes. As long as the connection strings are all set, it will pull the data directly from the database. It will pretty much just execute your code. It will do an activator.create instance, and if your particular I think that's what we're using. I'll have to look at the internals, but it's something similar to that. But if your constructor requires a parameter, right, then you're going to have to somehow set that parameter up. And there's a way to do. By the way, I don't have it there, but if you look at the object data source, it will say to use a default constructor, or you can use other constructors that push parameters in it. Good question. Any other questions?
Oh yeah. How long do you want to go? Let's see.
Well, it's up to you, Julian. You're the boss.
Well, we'll continue for a few more minutes. Luciano wants to know, I would like to know if there is something in the roadmap related to the dashboard end-user designer to support end-user custom actions like the report designer does.
Oh, he's looking for an end-user designer for the dashboards. I think I answered that question. It's something we definitely would love to have, but currently we do not. But like I said, the stuff we're doing for the web end user designer is very helpful when it comes to our design for the dashboard designer, and I'm sure it will carry over some.
Okay, hang on a minute. I'm just. Can the report server connect to any ODBC data source?
Yes.
Yes.
Anything that XPO can connect to, it can connect to.
Yeah. Can we use SignalR to see real-time data in the dashboard and report designer?
Yes, but the problem is that once it renders, we're not going to do automatic updates. So you can imagine doing some kind of set timeout in JavaScript and then refreshing the data that way. Incidentally, in the end, the dashboard viewer is pure HTML5, and it uses our DevExpress visualizers. And so you can imagine a scenario where you can do an automatic update and do a pull. It's not reactive in the sense of like it's not like a reactive extension things. We're not. Definitely the pull model, not the push model. But you can totally set that up.
Can we use the dashboard independently without the report server?
Yeah, the dashboard, in fact, is not. It's a component. It's not a product. The report server is a completely separate thing, and I just showed that because we added new features. Our reporting. Okay, so the way to think about it is this: put a report server on the shelf and pretend it's a shrink wrap product, because that's what it is. Our reporting core and our dashboards; those are developer products for you to build for you as a developer to build tools for your end users. Good question.
Okay. Massimo says, I only have a DevExpress ASP.NET license. Can I create a report and show it to my users inside the report viewer, or do I need a report server license?
Yes. Like I said, if you're using reporting core, you can use our reporting ASP.NET stuff, but you will be limited to only use reports inside of ASP.NET with that license. But yeah, you should be able to do it perfectly. In fact, the stuff I showed you for reports core will definitely work for ASP.NET.
Okay. Any plans for a date picker filter element? I presume there is.
Yeah, that's a good question. The problem with the date picker filter element is that it presupposes a certain granularity in the filtering, and that would be day filtering. So in this case, let me show you something. Let me try this. I haven't tried this yet, and so bear with me here. So I'm going to run this, and let's see. Let me add a data source real quick. So support. I should have just left this open, and then SQL Express, and the database is analysis. And let me hit next, and let me hit OK, and then finish. And let me just add a couple of things here. I'm going to add a tree view filter element, and then I'm going to add a pie here. And on the pie, I'm going to do what I did before here, and then I'm going to, it's not the sum, it's the count, and then I'm going to do the issue type. And on the tree view, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop an opened, right? And then I'm going to drop an opened again. Do you see this? Notice that this does not force a specific granularity, right? If I had a date picker, it forces the user to pick a date. This does not, right? So I can take out everything from 2004, everything from 2003, 13, and everything. So I can look at Q4 in 2013. But let's just say I want to go into opened, and then I'm going to choose month. Do you see this? Notice that this tree view, if you're using it right, works really well to filter it out. Now let's say we want to go to the day. So let's go to day. Do you see this? This does much more than what a date picker filter element would do. Right? It does much more. Because my sense is that they would never want to look at the day. My sense is that they'd want to look at maybe quarters and years and months. This, to me, is very impressive in what it can do. So the tree view, I think, is more powerful than a simple date picker because it doesn't presuppose a filter range, right? And that's the thing. The other thing is, if you want to do like a really sort of granular filter range, I can do an ID count here, and I can do argument here, and I can do quarter year. And notice that now I can filter this stuff granularly based upon this. Right, and you can see that that does it. Okay.
Okay. Could you put up your last page on the slide deck,
Sure.
Seth? I think what we're going to do now is we're getting up to 1:15. If you do have any questions about what you saw today, or maybe you have questions that go beyond what you saw today, don't hesitate to email Seth. If you're currently using the report server or the dashboard, there is always the support center and the support team to answer questions as well. So I think we'll leave it like that for now with regard to questions and so on. So just to remind everybody, coming up later today, we have webinar-wise. This is another reason I want to basically shut this webinar down now, is because I've got to prepare for the next one. Is we have Paul Usher, who's going to be talking about what's new for HTML5 and mobile, in other words, DevExpress. And tomorrow, Seth is back at the same time. So Paul is at 1 p.m. Pacific time this afternoon. Seth is back tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. again for what's new for the Express app framework, and I've noticed a few XAF questions go by. So if you're interested in XAF, then please do join Seth and myself tomorrow. I'm presenting or I'm being the MC again. And on Friday, it's what's new for CodeRush in 14.2. And that's at 10 a.m. Pacific time with Mark Miller. And we do have a whole bunch of other webinars, so please do check the devexpress.com//webinars page to see what's coming up for DevExpress on the webinar front. They're limited seating, so do register before. Don't just try it on the day. And that's it, I think, for this one. And thank you very much, Seth, for a great presentation on reporting and dashboards in 14.2. Thank you very much. And thank you all for joining us. And, of course, thank you for choosing DevExpress. Bye-bye.